Everybody here is working in Bitcoin and maybe a little more well known for some of their...
Does not mean there is a such thing as climate change. That does not mean that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. Both of those are false. And then finally, we get a geoengineering ban in Florida, only to find out we don't even have our air rights above a certain, it's 2,000 to 200 feet, depending on the...
For me, I started my pattern recognition, and to me, pattern recognition is really just being willing to question the narrative. Alcohol is good for you, and if the grapes are organic and all of this stuff. And when you start to follow the money on all of those research studies, it leads back to big alcohol.
I worry so much about individuals that are going to be in a city living paycheck to paycheck and don't have that exit pre-planned.
I'm not looking for any, they already want to kill me anyway, so...
All right, you guys ready to have fun? Okay, thank you, John, for letting us host this panel. Conspiracy theorists no more. We have now become pattern recognizers.
Rebrand.
So, that's right. We've already won, you guys. No, but in all seriousness, shout out to CJ, who is a fellow pattern recognizer, who has been recognizing the patterns of failure in fiat and creating fantastic solutions for people who want to buy houses, because we can't live in our Bitcoin, right? So for those of you who are not chronically online, my name is Michelle Weekly. I'm probably best known for running my mouth online and saying things that nobody else wants to say. But I think that resonates with a lot of people, and the reason that it does is because whether it's a few weeks, a few months, or a few years later, a lot of the things that sound really, really crazy end up becoming true. And that's why we're here today. So I am joined by some of my absolute favorite people in the space, my fellow pattern recognizers, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. Carly, you wanna start and we'll go down?
My name is Carly Benson. I have been in the Bitcoin space since, 2017. You guys ever heard of the Bitcoin conference? Yeah? Oh, come on. No one's heard of the Bitcoin conference?
The big one.
Aren't we at it right now?
I run the Whale Pass program at the Bitcoin conference. So thank you. Yes. And so, yeah, I don't know how much more we want to do the intros, but quick.
Intro.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Chris.
You guys all know Chris. And Paul.
Paul Tarantino, I'm the CEO of Byte Federal. We do Bitcoin ATMs, wallets, and POS systems.
That's right. So, okay. So everybody here is working in Bitcoin and maybe a little more well known for some of their less hot takes, but I'm going to probe them for their hot takes. Chris, we're going to start with you. So you often end up on macro panels and talk about, numbers and TradFi stuff and trading and all of that. But I would like for you to talk about geoengineering and what is geoengineering? What do we see falling from the skies? What led you to start noticing those patterns, and what have you done about it? Because I think that that's something really important you're doing that people are maybe not aware of.
Yeah, so basically, long story short, I'm a nature advocate, big in conservancy, and as a surfer, fisherman, diver, have just devoted all of my non-financial life outside of being a father and a husband to holistically protecting the environment from human beings. That does not mean there is a such thing as climate change. That does not mean that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. Both of those are false, demonstrably. So, and I, as a historian first and a macro and hedge fund guy second, We actually can start at the patent level, right? Because anything that doesn't occur naturally has to be patented. Why does that matter with geoengineering? And this is pattern recognition. If it were condensation trails, it would not require patents. So anybody who doesn't believe that what they're being sprayed with is toxic as a motherfucker, and you're all morons for not fighting it, then you deserve what they want to do to you. And go ahead and read Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 for what their plans are for you. So those patents began in the 40s. And we can pull one up right now. You want to have fun?
There are patents, you guys.
So this is a smart dust patent. Let me find it. I save all this stuff because I am active in the state. So if anybody wants to look this up, it's U.S., well, that's subliminal. Hold on. U.S. patent number. Anybody following on? Look it up on Perplexity or Anthropic. Come on, Wes. 113546666. B1. Smart dust and its usage. Do we want to know who owns this patent? Somebody guess? Just anybody guess? One at a time. Well, Bill Gates, that's a good guess.
DOD.
Probably they created it because the ownership and filer of this is Wells Fargo. Now, does Wells Fargo have a smart dust nanoparticle pathogen division at their bank? No. So that means fucking DARPA did it. Period. So I think that was a very robust way to break the seal on anybody who doesn't know what's happening. So in addition to pushing Bitcoin bills, monetary bills in Florida, I somehow got into advising politicians who are 9 out of 10 are complete worthless, grifting communists. Ron DeSantis is mostly not one. And when you convince them with data and samples, Dr. Jane Ruby, Dr. David Martin, Mike Adams, with proof.
Just to clarify for people who maybe this is really new to, they are spraying the skies. You can see that, right? And you're talking about the patents on what they're spraying,
Exactly.
and you've been testing some of that, what's
to
coming.
Prove, right, so where's Craig? Oh, he's not even here. What a dick. So anybody a gold bug? And you know a lot about metals. Can they aerosolize themselves? No. Oh, shit. So how does aluminum, selenium, cadmium, strontium get in the air column, water supply, and in the soils? How? If we can prove that that's in it, then how does it do it? We have to then find the vector of attack, which is industrial, non-commercial, because commercial planes don't spray any of this, military craft. And so it was 15, 16 years of fighting this, and then finally we get a geoengineering ban in Florida, only to find out we don't even have our air rights above a certain, it's 2,000 to 200 feet depending on the county. And I should stop, that was a diatribe. So essentially, my only goal, like the money system's actually gonna just collapse on itself, and some matrix of commodity money will occur after this fourth turning. I'm not even concerned about money because we have ways to hedge, adapt, augment, and evolve. With this, we're being poisoned at every angle. Water, like fluoride, poison, right? Everything is lower testosterone, mind control, blah, blah, blah. And now they've just quietly upgraded the Verizon network to 7G. That's why it was down twice this week. And no one understands that these towers are direct energy weapons. They have weather control patents going back to the 50s. The hurricane that hit Savannah, there was lawsuits, and there was congressional hearings in the 70s on weather control. So all of this is more in my purview now to fight, because if we keep allowing our natural environment and our children and ourselves to be poisoned, we're not going to be able to raise our consciousness and fight this metaphysically and spiritually. Then it won't even matter that we have Bitcoin.
Right. What's the point in holding lots of Bitcoin or having an immense amount of wealth if you are too sick or poisoned to enjoy your life, right? So these things really, really matter. So I know you're doing a lot of work in that space, and whether people know it or not, it's good.
I'm not looking for any, they already want to kill me anyway. So it's just backing up, giving evidentiary factual data,
Right.
time-stamped, and geolocated from, okay, this came from Melbourne, this came from over Tampa, this came from over Orlando, so that those who have legislative power and the monetary influence over that legislative power can, because nobody likes to be poisoned. Even the leftards don't like to be poisoned. So I think we have in Florida, let's call it a little more gravitas to fight this, and I will never stop yelling and screaming until we do.
Thank you.
So if you go to naturalnews.com right now and type in, Mike built an AI that's completely decentralized called Enoch, and you type in chemtrail samples Dr. Jane Ruby, because she collected them in Florida, then you are going to see video evidence of what he found under microscopy, and it is mother effing terrifying. I've been trying to detox this shit out of my blood for 3 years straight, and it's impossible. Yeah, it's not pneumonia. It's an aluminum toxicity primarily, because what happens in your lungs is the fibers that clean out the particulate daily, they get paralyzed. And so the body's response is mucus. Well, then that can lead to fever, headache, and other dysfunctions. So it's the virology is fake, and too bad if you don't already know that.
Yeah.
Contagion is not real. And when you dive into data and science, real evidentiary-backed science that's also means-tested and control-tested, this is very easy to uncover. So the pattern that we all need to recognize is that we've been lied to for arguably 200-plus years, at minimum since 1913 and 1928. Look up why those dates matter, where there was a conversion to allopathic. So I would argue she didn't have pneumonia, because there's no such thing as pneumonia. She had a toxicity expressing itself in symptoms that the mainstream media calls pneumonia. Well, now I have to pull it out from the phone.
We'll find it for you. We'll find it for you after. I think a couple people.
Hold on.
We'll get it to you after this.
We'll get it for you.
Well, there's actually, and you're making a great point, and let me answer this from a couple different angles. So let's just use rough math. 1/3 of the pilots are in on it, get off on it, want population control, depopulation, et cetera. 1/3 of them, their wives and children have been threatened to be killed, and 1/3 of them have no effing idea what they're doing, they're just getting a paycheck. And there was a woman, I forget her name, she's an activist, it's on Prime, it's a documentary on geoengineering. She actually confronted pilots doing it who said exactly that statement. So, and then you're like, well, why does Bill Gates want to poison us? Well, everybody lives in Florida, give or take, except the nice Aussies over there. Welcome the Aussies right there, Paul. Hey, they traveled a long way. How many times have they released toxic geoengineered mosquitoes in our state? Constantly. How could that be obviously that's not for good reasons, duh. So we just have to take back our power and understand what is the dynamic of how these pilots are either privately employed or through DOD, and RFK said on camera, we think it's DARPA. Well, no kidding, which is it's basically the worst globalist entity other than the Fed is DARPA. So
Mosquitoes
it's just
and ticks.
Sorry.
Mosquitoes and ticks.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, Lyme disease is man-made. Yes, exactly.
All right, so they're poisoning us. That's really exciting, right? They're trying to make us poor.
I just
Really,
want to add,
really
like,
great.
there's a financial incentive to poisoning us,
Yeah.
right? Like, we're all aware of the overhang of Social Security and Medicare. When COVID came out, it instantly became evident to me and others in the pattern recognition category that this is a great way to solve a lot of the U.S. debt, right? Taper, there you go, taper the Ponzi, right, exactly. I wrote a letter to all my clients at that time, which, infuriated my employer at the time, about this obvious thing that seemed to be a solution if you are wargaming out the potential of a debt collapse in the United States. So these are not just topics that only impact your specific interest in the environment or things like that. These are big macro topics, and this engineering has a financial purpose for the people that are running the world. And being aware of it is your first step to figuring out how do we fight back against this. And so many people are unaware or unbelieving. They can't fathom the evil. And it's just like, you really have to start opening your mind that there's a lot of people that don't want us around.
I'm going to have you say more on that. So in this world full of doom and poison and people getting poorer and poorer, Bitcoiners are full of hope. And Paul, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about why does Bitcoin give us hope, and how can we use it as a tool to separate ourselves and be healthy in a sick world, be rich in a poor world, and separate ourselves from the state that hates us?
So for me, I guess I kind of I recognized all these problems before I got into Bitcoin, right? And I think for many people probably in this room, it was a very depressing world that we were looking at. When I discovered this technology and I saw the power, I instantly felt like we had the ability to flip the table on the power structure that currently exists, that wants all of this doom. They want all of this geoengineering and bioengineering to suppress our ability as humans to evolve to a level where we become more powerful than those that are controlling us. So Bitcoin became the financial tool for sovereignty. Once you see that, then it just becomes that one tool in the tool set of all the sovereignty stack that we need as individuals to build. Chris has just talked about, trying to flush this stuff out of his system. Like your wealth, your health, and your death are the most important things that will ever happen to you. It's going to start by building sovereign wealth. It then progresses to taking sovereign control of your health. And then how are you going to pass that to your future generations in a way that you not only deliver the finances, but you deliver the knowledge and you deliver the structure, the mission, the message, and that sovereign mindset so that future generations, like the Gen Zs we're going to hear from today, and I'm so proud of you guys for coming, give them applause. That we now can take ourselves into a position where we're going to we flipped the fucking food pyramid, let's flip the human pyramid, right? And that's where I think it is, but you can't do that broke. So you got to start by building your wealth. Or weak, right? You got to start by building your wealth, then you got to build your health, and then you have to build your family's future generations so that we don't lose this to the next 4-year cycle.
That's awesome. All right, I want to go to Carly. So Carly was a little shy in her intro. Carly runs the VIP program for the largest Bitcoin conference probably in the world. But before she did that, she had a whole nother life, and I'm going to let her talk about that, and about intentional living is something that she doesn't get to discuss that often. But Carly, I'm going to kick it off by asking you, did Bitcoin lead you to pattern recognition, or did pattern recognition lead you to Bitcoin, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this about me, but I quit drinking in 2008, and thank you. Feels like another life ago, just the perfect way to describe it. But for me, I started my pattern recognition, and to me, pattern recognition is really just being willing to question the narrative. I started questioning the narrative about alcohol, and I'm not here to lecture you about alcohol. I'm not here to tell you, if you drink, you're bad. But I am here to tell you that I became a thought leader in the sobriety space because I had a lot of hot takes about alcohol, and it is the only drug in the world that you have to defend yourself for not wanting to take. If someone said, hey, you want to go do some heroin, and you said no, they wouldn't try to convince you otherwise, So I, started speaking up about alcohol. I started blogging. I started coaching people. I was really questioning the narrative. And I had a run in there with money because for the longest time, there have been research studies and all these things that tell you, alcohol is good for you. And if the grapes were organic and all of this stuff. And when you start to follow the money on all of those research studies, it leads back to big alcohol. They were funding a lot of that research. And so now, fast forward 20 years later, it's not so weird to be sober or not drink, and I'm here for it. So I started questioning the narrative about alcohol, and then fast forward, I started dating a professional poker player. Dated him for about 8 years, and I saw these poker players transacting in Bitcoin, betting in Bitcoin, $200,000 on a UFC fight. They settled it in Bitcoin between themselves. And I'm like, what is this Bitcoin stuff? I guess I'm gonna buy some just in case it catches on. Okay? So then you fast forward to 2020, which you already alluded to. I lived in a little bubble. I'm like a yogi, I do intentional living, I don't drink alcohol, I don't follow the news, I don't follow politics until 2020. Now, I had no political bias whatsoever. I just flipped on the television and started watching these news conferences, and I'm like, what is going on? This is not tracking for me. And that's when I started really getting into pattern recognition. I started going down all the rabbit holes. And I think because I didn't have a political bias, I was able to, suss out what actually made sense to me. I went down all the rabbit holes, the geoengineering, the food, the pharmaceuticals, kid trafficking, you name it, nightmares for months. And in my mind, I was like, everything leads back to money and power. And that's when I got Bitcoin. I said, holy shit, if you actually can change the money, or at least the incentives around it, because you can't print more Bitcoin, you actually could change a lot of these problems in the world, and you actually could bring some truth to people. And that's when I quit my 15-year business as a consultant and a sobriety coach where I was making great money, and I took the job at the Bitcoin conference because I said, I want to put my talents behind something that is going to educate people, because the only way that we get to hyper-Bitcoinization is through education. And so I was a pattern recognizer first, then I found Bitcoin, and then I really started to connect the dots. And that's kind of what I always tell people, when they come and they say, well, I want to learn about Bitcoin. I would encourage you to question the narrative. Go look at the Federal Reserve. Go look at the central banks. Go look at how fiat started and when and why and how, and start looking at those patterns, because you got to understand the scam first to really understand Bitcoin. And so it's always interesting to me now that I'm in this space and I see where smart money is going. Gary was talking about this earlier about look at what smart money is doing. The pattern recognition now is watch where the money's going. And people are not selling their houses and putting all of their money into Bitcoin for no reason. And so now I'm on a level of I'm looking at the pattern recognition of what is money actually doing? Banks are coming to the table. Institutions coming to the table. The treasury companies, yes, it used to be anti-state, but if we truly believe in hyper-Bitcoinization, then that does mean that it's going to branch out everywhere. So.
It is so important to understand the problems that you're solving. I think a lot of people come to Bitcoin twice in waves or I also got into Bitcoin in 2017. A lot of people get into Bitcoin and they think they understand Bitcoin. And then you go down all these other rabbit holes, you start recognizing all of these different patterns, and you come to a new level of understanding Bitcoin. And I think most of us have had a similar journey where once you go past that turning point, nothing else matters, right? So I got into Bitcoin in 2017, primarily from a technology and financial perspective, and I used it to escape a past life. But 2020 was also a turning point for me. I had been living abroad, I had been working in China, I was here in Florida, But I still had all of these contacts in China, and I saw the COVID scam starting over there, and I was on WeChat talking to people who were literally getting locked in their houses, and I said to all of my family and friends, shout out to my parents who are here, and I said, this is coming here. They're going to lock us down. And people, I have never been looked at. I get looked at like a crazy person a lot, right? But this was a new level, you guys. Very early on, I said, this is coming here. And every single person said, absolutely no way. This is the United States of America. And then they locked down Italy. And then they locked down Canada. And then it came here. And so there are just so many patterns here, right? And as you start to understand them, you start to see how very connected they all are. And one of the challenges that I like to put forth now is I challenge myself to never ever say that could never happen here. And if we apply that financially and you look around the world at all of the fiat currency crises, if you look at what's happened in Cyprus, Lebanon, Nigeria, so many countries have lost complete control of their fiat currencies. And you cannot say that it cannot happen here, because it can and it probably will. So, thank you.
Paul?
You want to borrow?
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
No. We got a few more
Next
minutes.
contestant.
I want everybody's hottest take.
Just from a pure grand supercycle, Kondratiev wave, and then fourth turning, and then human technological cycles as well as spiritual cycles, we are in the end of fiat. This is ending now.
Correct.
You could mathematically say it already ended when QE started, right? Because that's essentially where the modality of fake gold back, then not gold back, all of that is a construct, but effectively the money became not money when they started quantitative easing. Globally, they've really not even stopped it. So whether it's 5 or 10, this is going to change. It never has not changed. And the pattern is always the same. You have commodity-backed money, then you dilute that commodity-backed money, and then you convert it to fiat, and then you debt bomb. And then the liabilities overwhelm the supply, and everybody loses. It doesn't matter if it's the British Empire, it's Rome, it's Mongolia. This is a human thing, and it's spread across technically like 2 to 4 generations, which make up the 4 turnings. So your optionality is limited any frickin' way. And this is where it's like the easiest kind of exit ramp onto, I get to protect my assets in one of maybe 5 things. And in order of importance, it's Bitcoin, gold, silver, land with water rights. And that's it.
Ammo.
And then bullets.
The thing that you said in there that I don't think people focus
Check.
on enough is the demo, right? Like that.
The demolition of the currency?
Yeah, the demolition of the entire system.
Yeah, you want to say more
Right,
about
I mean,
that?
that has been throughout history, what the pattern that Chris just described has been throughout history, how they impoverish humanity so that they can install the next system. We all talk about the next system that's coming, right? We talk about the surveillance state, we talk about Palantir, X, the super apps, everything that's coming, the 15-minute cities, et cetera. It's all been written, it's all out there, everybody can read it. How do they get you to take that up is through impoverishment, right? So you have to have a bridge. You have to have, like people talk about the Bitcoin life raft. You have to have this mechanism so that you can transport yourself through that gauntlet into the future. And that is more than Bitcoin, right? That is that's complete looking at yourself and saying, am I healthy enough? Am I wealthy enough? Do I have food resilience? Do I have a community around me that's going to support me? I worry so much about individuals that are going to be in a city living paycheck to paycheck and don't have that exit pre-planned because they're not connecting these dots. Their options are closing down on them so quickly. And I think this speaks to what they were talking about this morning, which is like, why are we so compelled to tell the Bitcoin story and to bring, it's not a cult. like Bitcoiners are passionate about humanity. We want everybody to get to that other side, or as many of us as possible. And if we don't help each other, it just, you're one little person on this island of massive state control and destruction. Because there are giants that are restructuring the world right now, as we're all watching in real time, and we're the ants that are trying not to get stepped on. Right? So you need to, as an ant, look up, look at the future, and figure out where are you going to be? Where's your money going to be? How are you going to feed yourself? Is that food going to elevate you? Is that food your best healthcare system? Is that food going to detox you? Because then you're going to start to be more intuitive. You're going to start to see the future more clearly. And you'll have the capability to think about this future from a clear mind because you know you have a plan, because you know you have that life raft. So I think all of these things are sort of left out of our Bitcoin conversation at large. And Bitcoin is just a center of that hub, and it really affects everything around you, and you need to start using it in a way that can empower you in all those different other spokes that are so important to not only our survival, but our ability to evolve and become better at being human.
I want to comment on that because, you know, we're all talking about how we've recognized patterns and then it naturally led us to Bitcoin. There are a lot of people who find Bitcoin and then it has the reverse. And what ends up happening is you start going down the pattern recognition of the money system because your entry point was Bitcoin. And then you're like, well, if they were lying to us about this, then like, what else are they lying to us about? And then you start going down these tracks of, you know, health and wellness, and, you know, Bitcoiners become carnivores and they start this, you know, they opt out of the medical system, and, you know, it becomes this domino effect. So it can go either way. And I think like the overarching idea that I would say is, you know, whether you begin to recognize the patterns first and it leads you to Bitcoin, or you find Bitcoin and it leads you to the patterns, it's very important that you figure out the patterns.
Absolutely. And I just want to add, it's okay to be crazy, right? Like, I'm on the internet all day being crazy. I've got some of my favorite fellow crazy people here. But
Michelle, we're not crazy. You're right.
That's right.
You're always going to sound crazy.
I don't have a subjective bone in my body. You know that.
I know.
I'm always a skeptic and a bear and a contrarian. So in order for me to even tell you, they already have the CBDC nodes ready, and you're the fucking node. I know that factually. Like, they can roll out the Empire credits instantaneously already. That apparatus has permeated the entire planet, right? So this is not crazy.
So you know I don't think you're crazy.
I'm just
the reason
distinguishing from, you know, a nomenclature that really isn't applicable to people who are trying to ascend.
You're always going to sound crazy to people who don't do research.
That's true.
And it's hard for a lot of people to even fathom the technology that exists.
Already exists.
That's already in our bodies.
Right.
Why is a phone called a cellular phone?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but the reason
you are the cellular network.
Correct.
The reason that I say that is just because I want to encourage everybody who is maybe not as far along in their journey to just keep going, because wherever you are on this spectrum, whether you're brand new or you're 10 years deep into all of the patterns, there will always be people who are not willing to do the research, who are going to call you crazy. And so even if you're not sure about some of the things that we're touching on here, you may feel a little bit crazy just talking about Bitcoin to normies in your life, to people that turn on the legacy media and believe all the propaganda that's being pumped into them. And I think my biggest message is screw them, forget about it. It doesn't matter, right? Like, if you're here and you're interested in Bitcoin, keep going, because you're correct.
There's two paths. One is a high consciousness warrior poet. and then the other is a Spartan. And those are our optionality here if you'd like your bloodline to continue in harmony. And Paul and I were talking last night, and I'll shut up after this. How peaceful will our deaths be if in our lifetime we end the succubus that is the central banking system? So I'll leave it with that.
I was just going to say, too, someone mentioned it earlier. I think it might have been Cedric. He said, you get online and you see all of these, I guess we'll call it Bitcoin maxis. We don't do crypto, we don't do the other stuff. Part of the reason why you see people who are so passionate about Bitcoin is because they have done the research and they have noticed the patterns and they want to help other people see it. Although I'm not saying it's always the best method, that is why Bitcoiners are so passionate about speaking about it. And that's why we do these conferences and we try to spread the message. And I would say, if you are a pattern recognizer, which I would imagine a lot of you are in this room, the best way to help people around you and in your life is not to preach at them, it's to get them asking questions. Don't assume that the points that you want to make about Bitcoin or the world or the crazy stuff are what's going to land for them. What's going to land for them is where they're at in their journey. So you have to meet them where they are.
Yeah, just show people, prove it. Like, I'll tell you guys a little family story because I think it just says exactly what Carly's saying. I've been preaching to my parents about food for God knows how long, and COVID and everything else, right? And it got to the point where it's like, oh God, we have to go to Paul's house again. But as we've gotten older, now we do all the holiday dinners at our house, right? So now they're eating grass-fed beef. They're having homemade sourdough with wheat that's imported, and we're making our own ice cream and desserts, and it's the full Thanksgiving dinner. They eat like pigs, and afterward they go, I feel really good after this meal. It's like, yeah, no shit. That's what I've been fucking telling you for the last 5 years. So,
Backyard chickens are the gateway drug to Bitcoin. All right, so I think we've just got a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Sure.
With the remedy and the elixirs, dude.
Yeah, repeat the question.
So the question was, well, first let's establish the question's invalid because these toxins and poisons exist and were concocted to do so. But so what you're asking is, oh, okay, that's what I got you. So so David Icke calls them the global death cult. So we'll just use that to describe they. They have the solutions already, and some of you might know enough about technology to know that there are already med beds. And I'm actually beaming 7 different quantum fields around my biofield now to harden my chi. So if anybody wants to talk about that, we can. We're not going to do it on the stage. But to your point, even though I have that level of consciousness of what I can do to defend and detox myself, these folks have access to technologies that no one really is going to believe exist.
The other thing that I would say to maybe somebody who's more of a normie is, why do we bomb innocent people all over the world? Like, do you really believe that the government doesn't commit atrocities? Because if that's the case, then there's no helping that person. But,
Chris?
They've been papering the silver, which is they've been papering the Bitcoin. Eventually, people are going to learn about silver, but then it's going to translate into Bitcoin.
Does anybody know the paper to? So Bitcoin's supply is not fixed, guys. Does anybody know how much more paper there is than the Bitcoin? It's 7-to-1 right now.
Real Bitcoin supply is
What
fixed.
is real? I mean, I'm being a devil's
Bitcoin and
advocate.
self-custody.
Right, and so the ratios in gold and silver for all of Gary's lifetime, where's Gary? I love you, Gary, has been in the hundreds and up to as high as 11 and 1,200%. So while its scarcity is a monstrous feature, don't think these powers that ought not be are not going to weaponize price, which is how you see price distortions in Q4 that don't make any sense, don't match any prior correlations, right? So the paper tail wags the dog, essentially.
And my message is just, if you don't know what any of that means, because I don't, just hold your own Bitcoin in your own self-custody and forget the paper games.
What we're saying when we say they're papering it is, for example, you've got massive institutions, you've got the Michael Saylors, you've got these people, they're doing these massive Bitcoin buys. They're buying them predominantly through Coinbase, and that's not to throw Coinbase under the bus, but there's no mechanism or source of truth for Coinbase to say, we actually bought those Bitcoins. What they're doing is they're buying an IOU. That's what we mean by papering. And the same thing has been done with silver, and it's starting to get to the point where this thing's about to explode. There's not enough silver to back up the need for it, and banks are realizing they're going to have to flip their narrative because they don't have a choice. And eventually, Bitcoin will get to this point where it's about to pop.
The collapse is coming.
Turn off the video, please.
You might have to talk to Chris about that
Hang
afterwards.
on. Repeat your question.
Oh, my question was, how do we prevent these derivative markets from creating this issue? And then how do we also prevent bifurcation?
You don't.
I
Okay.
could go bottoms up, but let's just go macro-prudential. You just have to destroy the central banks and the exchanges. We have to accept that even as Bitcoiners, there is a lop-off effect of our livelihood to go through this transition. The current derivatives number is 4.79 quadrillion. But I would argue it's a combination of awareness and higher consciousness that exists, a understanding that we are not obligated by law to comply with this system, to pay taxes to this system. IRS and the Federal Reserve are not constitutional. They were not ratified by a total vote in Congress, and then the states did not ratify income tax. All of the narrative around that's occurred is complete bullshit. And then you wrote a good book describing the fact that there's been 2 bankruptcies in the Fed, one by FDR, that was probably the most recent, and then technically a technical bankruptcy in '71. So how we have to tackle it is kind of awareness first, legal second, and then rebellion third.
And that's that, folks. We'll talk to you after. And I just want to say Bitcoin is working exactly as it was designed to.